Welcome to the Ambiguous Show, a podcast for those who live in the in-between. I'm your host, Ashley Blake. Welcome back to another episode. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for listening, guys. I am constantly surprised and grateful for all of the feedback. Thanks for hanging in with us and listening to each episode. You guys are great. I'm really excited about this week because I get to introduce you to one of my favorite human people, Jasmine Harris. She is an incredible artist and poet, and I'm so excited about our conversation. We talk about stewarding the earth, about her curiosity with her heritage, and we also talk about just awareness in the world and in nature and how that changes our perspective. It's so good that I'm just going to go ahead and get out of the way and introduce you to Jasmine. Jasmine, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I currently live in Cultus Lake, BC. So I'm pretty much in the mountains now. Living with my husband and our dog Lucy. I'm a watercolor artist and a poet and a forager, and I teach forest school to preschool kids. So we meet out in the woods and we just play. I have a pretty awesome job. I don't know. Yeah, I think I have a lot of interests, so it's hard to say
oh, right.
What am I?
Oh, girl, I'm the same. Yes. Let me give you a list of 75 things.
Yes, exactly.
Have you always lived in BC?
Yeah, I've pretty much grown up in the Fraser Valley, we call it. So I've moved around in a couple different towns, but same spot for the most part. And I've traveled abroad a little bit, like to New Zealand. My dad is from Sri Lanka, so I've been back to Sri Lanka once. And just trying to think, I traveled to England by myself. It was like my first solo trip.
Oh, nice.
Big exciting adventure. Yeah. Grown up here. My dad's Sri Lankan. My mom is Nishka, which is a First Nations nation in BC, as well as we never really know what to say. It's like Irish Americans. Like my grandpa grew up in Maine. He's pretty Irish, but very American. So I don't know what that falls.
Right. I love that.
Yeah.
So have you always, did you outside a lot, and have you always been out in nature, or is that something you cultivated later?
That's a good question. I think it's been an ongoing kind of interest or excitement. As a family, have always liked, hiking or exploring. Especially my dad. My dad and I love to go out and hike. Or we're always talking about the latest mushroom we've foraged or something crazy insane. And I think though it's been more of a recent interest in exploring how much to forage or what exactly from the land can be used and eaten. And so just over the past couple of years, I've really been trying to dive into that. What are our native plants and how can I use them for medicine and for food? And I think that was mostly it kind of kicked in, I guess, when I had some questions just about my Nishka heritage and what that meant and the history and the roots. And it was easiest to kind of plug into foraging to find that connection.
That's really interesting. So was there something that kind of prompted those questions or like prompted your interest in starting that journey?
I think it started out of like a pain place of feeling like I'm a lot of different cultures and I don't always know how to identify that or how to explain it to people if they ask, like, what are you? And just like trying to extrapolate that question and how it can be an exciting answer, but it can also be hurtful of like,
Right.
well, I'm a human.
In person, nice to meet you.
You know, yeah.
Yes, I
So
totally.
I think like, right, yeah, I think like trying to maybe build more of a connection with this part, like, so my grandma is Nishka, but we didn't really grow up with doing the same traditions or she left the area she grew up in quite early on. So there wasn't like a huge connection for us. And we didn't grow up going to powwows or celebrating their celebrations. And then I just started getting questions like in my head of, well, why? I think with like sometimes so I'm Christian, but sometimes in Christianity, there can be like this maybe taboo kind of like we don't really talk about First Nations culture a lot of the time, or maybe we don't know how, or I don't know if it's just like where we are geographically. It could be so many factors. And I wanted to answer those questions for myself of like, is it bad to go to a powwow? Or like what does that even mean? Where do we get these notions? And so I asked my grandma to take me to Hobaye, which is a celebration for harvest time. And it happens around a certain full moon around springtime. So it kind of signals like spring harvest is coming and it's this exciting feast. And it's held in Vancouver around here. And it was so moving to hear both like Nishka language, see the apparel, and hear the drums. And it established that connection that I think I was missing. Yeah. And then I just wanted to know more. And that really kind of fueled it, I think, of like, this is awesome. I want to know more.
Yeah, I think that, and my observations have been that it's more of like a Western Christianity thing that doesn't necessarily allow different ideas. Like they have a hard time holding both things, if that makes sense. Of like, I can understand this idea or I can practice this idea, and that doesn't go against this other thing. You know what I mean? Of like the duality of things.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Friends, we're going to be right back in the conversation right after we hear from our sponsor. This podcast was created with Anchor. It's the easiest way to make a podcast. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute the podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to get started in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. I'm interested in your progression with ethnobotany. Oh, I saw you the other day you were talking about the book that I just got in the mail last week. I just started reading it, Braiding Sweetgrass.
Braiding Sweetgrass. Oh my goodness, I love.
Someone just recommended it to me like 2 weeks ago or something, and I got it and immediately was like, well, this is life-changing.
Yes! It so is.
And I thought that I could like read through it quickly, and I'm like reading really slowly because it's like saying like magical, there's just magical words. And like the
Yes.
language is so beautiful, but also it's like something that I need to think thoroughly through of like, it's not just something I can like toss out into the wind and be like, oh, that's a good quote. I'm
Yes.
like, no, that's like, I need to work through that one.
Yes.
That's a
Yeah.
mindset change.
Yes. Like I want to live and breathe that. Like
Yes.
that book is dense. Like there's so much goodness and gold in there.
Mm-hmm.
I love that book.
I'm excited to continue reading it for sure.
Totally. Yeah. I just finished that book this semester
Mm.
and we were kind of reading it alongside learning native plants
Mm-hmm.
around here and their Latin names, but also in centering indigeneity of like, what are the indigenous names? How have indigenous tribes used them? And so we created like a little herbarium in class and pressed flowers and botanical specimens. And it was awesome. The professor was awesome. But just reading that book alongside this process kind of made her words more tangible.
Sure.
I think of like I don't know, and you're like touching the poetry, like when you feel the roots and you're snipping or you're looking at these like I was looking at salmonberry bushes and osoberry shrubs and you see them and you're watching them grow and you're doing your little sketches for your journals and then it's like you see exactly what Robin's talking about, just like how all these species are connected and how they're talking to each other in their plant words. And it was a pretty moving book and moving class for sure.
I think it's interesting. I know we've had like a few chats about my process in gardening, my newfound interest in gardening and failures and all the things. But I've had a lot of thought energy towards like the reconnecting to land and reconnecting to just like the reverence of earth. Like I think that it was just not even a thing that ever crossed my mind. I mean, I did grow up in a really beautiful area and spent a lot of times in the mountains when I was younger, but since I've been in the States, I've always been pretty city oriented. And I'm just like, trees are pretty, that's great. And like that's like the extent of that. And so it's really different when you're like trying to actually like pour into the land and that like connection with, I don't know, I think it's just something that in the process, and you know, people will say like gardening's relaxing, and I do think that I experience like calm and peace. I also think that it's like more of like a mindset shift of like abundance because you have this like ever giving like life infrastructure, you know, and that changes like the way that you like about life. Or at least like for me, like mindset and like spiritual, even like spiritual set, like shifts when you spend time like nurturing the land. I don't know how that experience has been for you or if that was like also a motivator or I don't know.
Yeah, I found it's like a almost like that tonal shift. Like I just finished sketching out a little tonal bar graph so that I could see from dark to light and kind of sketch properly or get my hues better. But I think like it's been almost that like going from not really knowing much to suddenly, you know, each hike I see something different. Like I didn't know that those bugs liked that kind of tree or and then it's like progressing into wow, I can spot like a little slope and know I'm going to see some osoberry shrubs there. And so it's kind of shifting into this if I got lost on this hike, I would know where to survive and kind of growing into appreciation for these plants that just are present and they're just growing. And if I need them, they're there to sustain me. And finding that those kind of connections of like really feeling grateful and blessed by these plants that don't talk in the same language as us. And I think you'll read that in Robin's book of like these are like incredible species around us and they're so capable of so much. And I think one thing that really struck me is she said, like, there's like this honorable harvest she writes about. And one of the steps is to ask the plant if you can pick from it. So if you find some wild strawberries, ask the plant if you can pick from it. And it's not just like waiting for this mysterious or mystical yes or no, but you're like working to train your mind and your eyes to see what has this plant kind of been capable of, or how long has it been growing? Do you see that it's kind of a baby hemlock, or is it really large and it's not going to mind if you snip a couple boughs for your tea or something? And I'm getting lost in this train of like wonder. Oh, it's like getting really excited.
That's great.
Forget my sentence. But yeah, I found it's definitely a gradual kind of, how much time can I commit to this to learn more about all these plants, all these miracles around us. And yeah, it's definitely, I think, a mixture of the gentleness of being in nature, but also that hard work of training your mind to see so much more of how much is working so hard out there.
Foraging is something that's really new to me. And I know you said that you would go on hikes with your family. So is that something that you've just always... I can't find words.
Totally. Yeah. I am trying to think back, because like my mom, she's been the one to provide us with like the books and those fun resources and like the learning behind it. Often it's my dad who comes home with like these mysterious mushrooms and is the daredevil to try them. And we're all like, no. Mushrooms are a scary business. I personally have not gotten into that field. But like, I think he's definitely inspired me to have fun with the berry picking. Like we'd go up, get like our big tubs of blackberries, and we freeze them for the rest of the year. Or the berries were a big one. Going to orchards growing up, we'd go on road trips, stop at the peach orchard, and load up. And I think like it does stem from this excitement of going out together, and like so many family memories are picking fruit, making chutneys or jams in the backyard. And we've got our huge setup of like mom's, stirring the pot. It's this massive pot, and all these jars are out, and it's like all this hard work. And they're both big into gardening as well. And so it's not like your typical rows. My dad loves to just make an entire yard your garden, and like vegetables and squashes and beans are like growing out from everywhere, and the greenhouse is packed with tomatoes. And so having this like familial kind of love for produce and what it can make and how it sustains us, I think is what's really sparked this like, can I find it in nature now that I'm living closer to the forests? Or can I find it when I'm just going for a canoe ride with my family, and like, oh, can I eat that berry? And so there's this like love for sustenance and this love for growing, and how all these vegetables are just so beautiful. I think it's this love for food, and it's like, can I find it outside? Yeah. Foraging is scary though. I remember when I first got a couple of my guidebooks, it was just like, wow, there's so many poisonous lookalikes. Like, one wrong identification and I'm dead.
Well, to be honest, when I first started going outside at all, that's one of the things that was really intimidating to me, because I bought a bunch of books and I would look at them and I'm like, this leaf and this leaf look exactly the same, but you're telling me one will kill me, and I don't know what to do about that information.
It's too much. It's like, this is not worth that risk.
Oh yeah. It's really interesting. Well, even I don't know if I've told you the story. When I first started gardening, I was just so excited because we moved out here and we had yes, garden. Obviously, we have to garden now. And
Yes.
I just like threw seeds out and I was like, this is going to be
Mhm.
glorious. And stuff started growing. And I honestly didn't know what anything actually looked like coming out of the ground. Like how plant, like if it grows underground or above ground or like what its leaves look like, what were weeds and what were seeds. And then also like I didn't label anything. So there was just stuff everywhere
Yes.
and didn't space anything. And it was just like everything's just, I don't know.
I love
It
it.
was the most chaotic mess of it. It was so sad. And I planted it right under a tree. So nothing ended up growing because once the tree started growing, there was no sunlight and therefore, nope. Yes, I made all the mistakes you could possibly make.
Aw.
It was great.
Yes.
But then it like that was such an eye-opening thing to me of like these produce that I've eaten my whole life. I don't even know what they actually look like or how to
Mm.
identify them was like really I mean, I had no idea up until that point of like how much I hadn't been paying attention.
Mhm.
And so like now that's one of the most interesting things to me of even in our garden now, like being able to teach our children like this is what this food looks like. This is how you eat it, but this is what it looks like so that you can know
Mhm.
like, you know, when you're out somewhere looking at a field, we're surrounded by farmland. But when we first moved here, we never knew what was growing. It's like, look at that lovely field. So nice. So nice. That looks great. I mean, obviously, we'd be like, corn. We can tell that's corn. And then
Right?
anything
Yes.
else, it's like, I wonder what that is.
Yes.
But so even
Totally.
like the basics of like what you're already eating, knowing what it its
Mhm.
actual form and it's something so simple, but like really has taken me all of my life to get to.
Yes. Yeah. Aw.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little late to the party, but I'm really glad that I made it to the party.
You made it.
It's funny though. Well, I just assumed that everything that I was planning, I just assumed like 50% would die because I'm not really great. I wouldn't say that I'm great with plants. I just want to be. But like everything's living, and so I like overplanned.
Oh, totally.
I was like, I don't know what to do, but it's fine.
Exactly. I did the same thing for our first garden. I think when we first kind of met over
Yeah, yeah.
Instagram, I started our first garden in the back, and it was so many times I'm calling my dad, just like, I do I have to weed this? Or like, what is this? Is this edible? Like, is this weed good in salads?
Right,
Or
right,
do I need
right.
to take it out? And then it's like I was so nervous that all my seeds would just fail that I
Yeah.
planted at least like 10 bean seeds in a little hole. Our beans were out of control.
So your poetry and your artwork have such a strong connection to nature. Has it always been that way, or is that just because that's a strong focus in your life right now?
I think it's always been that way. I think back to like I had a watercolor artist or teacher in grade two, and she would like sketch out these beautiful koi fish for us and do like step by step. And so much of her work was inspired by nature. And I think that like really kicked it off for myself of
Mm.
just I loved it. I fell in love with watercolor painting then and just kind of kept going with it. Um, the poetry I think is newer in that, you know, when you're in like middle school, you're writing your songs, you're emotional. It's like, I think at some point, um, it was probably when I traveled to New Zealand, I felt this like shift in, we were in the middle of all these hills and beautiful clouds changing all the time. The weather was just always crazy, like beautiful rain, beautiful sun, rainbows everywhere.
Mm.
And I think that really kicked it off for me, of just wanting to put that into words, or put into words how it was making me feel. And it's never really stopped. Like, it's such a good outlet when I'm out in nature to just write down, I don't know, something kind of opens up and the words just happen, or the feelings I don't have words for suddenly kind of get pushed out into something. And now I find I have to have that, like in the morning or at some point in the day. I need that connection of being out, at least in our backyard, like under the trees, in the wind. I think it's just like a little quiet chamber of like settling, like peace. Okay. Yeah, I guess they're really inspired by nature. Lately, I've been into bird watching. And so now all my sketches and art is like, what bird can I sketch and paint, and who can I get to know a little bit more? Because you spend so much time just like staring at these photographs of little, like, I just got a little cedar waxwing picture set up, and I'm trying to draw it and paint it in my journal. It's just, you get so personal in their space. Like, wow, I didn't realize they had like such red flashes on their wings, or like, there's so much to kind of pause and listen to, and then kind of paint it out. So the artwork is definitely inspired by nature, but kind of, what am I really in awe of in nature right now? And in this season, that's birds. I just love birds.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love your work. I love listening to you talk. It's so grounding to me. I'm such a chaotic human. And I just really appreciate your energy. I'm like, that's lovely. I do love like the visual aspect of a bird, but I just yesterday had someone drive past my house, and I'm pretty sure they were worried about my whole life because I thought birds were attacking me and almost fell out. And they're just really fast, and their movements are unpredictable, and they were flying close to my face, and it was a wrap, and I was on the ground. There was like someone driving by, like looking at me. I was like, I don't. It was overreaction. I'm fine. Everything's fine. Where do you think you're headed, or like what are you interested in, like research wise or learning wise, as far as botany or indigenous plants or sustainability?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. It's good to ask myself that. Semester just ended, and then we just moved.
Oh, right.
And so everything's been really chaotic, and now we're feeling that settling. And we're also like, what do we do with our lives? So I think like I'm really curious about salmon population and protecting salmon. And so I've been interested in an organization out here that cleans up garbage and does like salmon workshops. So I guess there's like biologists who come out, and sometimes they'll pop up on the Instagram page and just talk about what fish populations are in the different rivers and lakes around here, how they're doing. And it's kind of a hot topic up here, just because there's a lot of salmon fish farms as well, and they're causing disease to the wild salmon. And it really piqued my interest this year because I realized how they're all kind of interconnected. Like, salmon help feed bears or eagles, and they also help feed humans. And there's this continuous life cycle of everything affecting each other. So much so that it's affecting like the cedar trees and nature around us. And it became like kind of alarm bells to me of I don't think I was paying enough attention to it. And now it's all I want to do. Like, I'm super interested in these like bug-eyed salmon. Like, they're kind of silly. So I'm painting them and everything. And that's been like on my list of things to do out here is, find that organization, help volunteer for them, and get to know just the different canals and rivers around here more alongside the community, because I think I've been doing it on my own for a little while, going out for my hikes,
Sure,
and picking up some garbage and, kind of getting to know the area. But it'd be fun to connect more with the community and get to know their perspectives and hear their opinions and how they've been on this journey too. And kind of connect with the Indigenous tribes that are around here more. So there's a lot of Stalo reserves around here, and we live quite close to one. And it'd be fun to just meet up and get to know their learning resources. And what does their classroom look like?
And what organization was this that you were talking about?
Yeah, this one's called Watershed Watch BC. I think that's what it's called. And they talk about a lot of the different, I think the word is sloughs around here. And, as simple as like a kayak ride with a bunch of other people who are interested in it as well. And you're kayaking down these little streams and things and just paying attention, getting to know things more, getting to know the fish more, that kind of thing.
The more I progress as an artist, the more I realize that I've just been so unaware in life, like in actual life, like so far. Because like you're saying, if you're sitting and you're staring at a picture for so long, then you become so intimate with this object or this, whatever you're drawing. And like with life, I think the more that I sit with like people from all over, and the more that I sit with story and with art, it's like there's so many perspectives that I've been missing as a human that I'm like becoming more curious and aware of as an artist. And yeah, so I would be really interested in like possibly exploring that with you. Are there any recommendations you have for anyone who wants to learn about botany or nature in general?
Oh, okay. Because I'm in BC, I often check eFlora BC, which is like a kind of an ecology or botany botanical website that UBC, the university here, has built for checking specimens, getting to know everything about a plant. I imagine other universities do this as well. So like checking with the biology departments in universities to see what kind of website forums they have for checking the specimens you're interested in. So these resources are super helpful. Plants of Coastal BC, but it's written by Pojar and Kinnan. I am really imagining that they've done more. I just got this off Amazon. And I think they have one for each section of North America, depending on the climates. Edible and medicinal plants, also of Canada. There's probably an American one. And then I just picked up Robin Kimmerer's other book, Gathering Moss, which I thought would be
interesting,
fun to read. I haven't started it yet, but I loved breeding sweetgrass so much that this has to be on the list too.
I want to thank Jasmine again for spending time with us and sharing a little bit of her story. She is such a wonderful person, and I would love for you guys to connect with her. On Instagram, she is at JasmineHope.Harris, and you can view all of her artwork and poetry there. Thanks, Jasmine! And guys, if you have any questions, stories, shout outs, remember, you can leave us a message on our Anchor page or send us an email at hello@moida.co. You can support the podcast at as little as $1 a month at anchor.fm/The Ambiguous Show. You can also help us by subscribing to the podcast, leaving us a 5-star review, and sharing with your friends. If you liked this episode or an episode before, make sure you send it to someone who you think might like it too. This podcast is produced by Moida, where creativity gathers and worlds collide. As a reminder, submissions are still open for the Moida magazine, and you can find the links in the show notes as always. Thank you, friends, for listening. And remember, you are exactly who you need to be. Until next time.